inviting me. And normally I would, but this subject was quite scary for me because my public library days were when I was a kid, and yes, I did go. We didn't have television. I lived in the middle of nowhere, so we went every Saturday morning. I have to say, I did take my son when he was little on the way to the swimming pool, so I have been in the last 20 years. But it made me feel very uncomfortable about standing up here and talking to you about public libraries building new partnerships for the future. So I figured I'd try and change it into something that I could talk to you about, which is to give you a case study, actually more of the European Library as an example of building partnerships for the future, based in the library sector, but which was actually the catalyst for Europeana and leads us into a whole series of other partnerships. I'm then going to have a look at possibilities for partnerships with public libraries that might contribute to the European policy agenda, so e-inclusion, digital literacy, social inclusion, learning, all the kinds of things that we've already heard this morning. And then I'm going to do some blatant advertising for the workshop tomorrow, where actually we want to create the beginnings of a project for possible funding. So together with the public libraries, the people who are interested in joining up to create a project that we could submit for funding. And if I've got time, I'll do a very quick demo of Europeana, but we'll see. Where's my tiny lady? She's there. Okay. I could probably do the whole talk more or less on this slide, but I'm not going to bore you with a whole load of other slides. But this gives you really where we came from in the last century to where we are today. So last century, we actually had Gabriel and the TEL project. There's probably even some people here who participated in them. These were a means of getting the national libraries to create a unique service, one that would work across the national libraries of Europe. 9 of those national libraries decided that it would be a good thing to create a real operational service from it. And that's actually where I came in with 2 other people, and a 4th person who's also in the audience joined us within the year, to try and turn what was a project that did have a business plan into an operational service. That was supported then by another European project, and in fact what's worth mentioning is that the national libraries paid for that initial service themselves. So it wasn't done, that one wasn't done with project funding, but they decided there was something in there that was worthwhile pursuing. We then asked for more money from the Commission, and this was Tell Me More. This was a great project. It brought on board the former East European national libraries into the European Library, and along the way we all learnt a lot. They learnt quite a lot more about how you might make your metadata conform, how you do OAI-PMH harvesting, these kinds of things. But we also learnt an awful lot more about how you make libraries work together in a network. It was a really wonderful project to be involved in. That then led us into EDL project, European Digital Library Project. And this is then, if you remember, the beginnings of when the letter had been written by the 6 heads of state, saying that it's appalling that digitisation is basically in the English language, and that we need to spread culture more widely across Europe and make it much more representative. EDL project was the first step in that water, but again, it was actually from the national libraries themselves. They decided to put up for a project run by, hosted by the German National Library, and along the way we tried to create a roadmap of what we would like a European Digital Library to be. So we began the process of beginning to bring together the museums, the libraries, the audiovisual collections, the archives across Europe. We had then TEL Plus, which was an enabling project for the European Library. It started to put in place technologies relating to a decent harvester, towards multilingualism, all the kind of things that you need to make a European project work. All of which led into Europeana, or ECEI10, as the project was originally known, before we nicked the name that the French had already thought up for Europeana. And the launch that many of you will have been at in 2008. The day my hair went grey overnight. This is all dyed. And that project finished, and we are now in yet another project, which is Europeana version 1, which is about turning Europeana operational. In between those, we had another project called Fumagaba. If I was clever, I could remember what each of those stand for, but it was the rest of the Council of Europe countries who are members of CENL. So it meant that the European Library ended up with 48 libraries from, I think, 46 countries across Europe, through projects, through networking together, through building partnerships. And those partnerships actually led to the ability, or the Commission figured, that if we could do the European Library, we must be able to do it, and do it for libraries, we must be able to do it for museums, archives and audiovisual collections as well. It didn't quite work out like that, but we certainly have moved a long, long way towards that kind of inclusion via projects in Europe. So just to give you a quick look at it, this is the European Library, and bringing all that information together has enabled some rather nice projects. This is one of my favourites, a Roma journey. I love this project. This is about the national libraries looking for material that they have on the Roma, digitising it and putting it up online in an exhibition. It creates a virtual space for a set of people who do not have a country, a space of their own. And I think this is a wonderful example of inclusion. It's a wonderful example of actually what the web can do in terms of bringing together communities. And it's a rather beautiful, you get the nice pictures moving around. I'm not doing it online. And I'm going to give you a very sneak preview of another one, which I probably shouldn't do. It's not launched until the end of September. But again, to do with libraries working together, digitising content in order to make it available online. And this one's called Reading Europe. It's taking some of the fantastic treasures that exist in our national libraries and putting it online so that you can see them in full text, so you can actually go through, click through and read the whole thing online. So it's seriously opening up what is available to everybody throughout the world online. Going back to the timeline, so the European Library led us into thinking that we could work in a wider sphere with the museums, the audiovisual collections and the archives, and the research libraries as well. That led us to the launch of Europeana and actually its recent move into being an operational site in July of this year, and a move now away from trying to be something that sucks data in from everybody to looking at how we push that data out. And I think there is a fantastic role for public libraries in helping in that area, but there are also other roles which I think some of the projects that we've done have parallels in, which would be very interesting to pursue with the public libraries in terms of dissemination of information, dissemination of resources, but also bringing in then to comment on some of the items that are up there, and I'll mention one of those projects that we'd like to pursue in a minute. We're now at 13.5 million objects. Belgium actually has 1%, it is in the top 50. I was glad that that's true. And you can see where we've got some issues in the type of content. So we have a large amount of images, a lot of text is gradually catching up, but sound and video is still very poorly represented, and this is largely to do with the rights issues. So one of the things that we are working on on an environment level is copyright, IPR issues. How do you make this stuff come to the web? How do you digitise it in the first place? We've got to that many objects to where we are with the technology through a whole series of projects that relate to Europeana. So from the very beginning of one small project that encompassed 9 libraries, we are now involved. We have a couple of our own, but we are involved with 20 projects which deliver content and technology across Europe. And it's really, this is where the funding comes from. And I think one of the huge advantages, I can say lots of bad things about the Commission, but today I'm going to say something good about the Commission, which is the enormous advantage that it gives Europeans in providing funding for this type of project. It's very difficult to make this kind of thing get off the ground elsewhere. All of these projects contribute content or technology. We also work with existing aggregators, so things like Cultura.fr, Cultura Italia, the European Library, in order to bring content into Europeana, and also to be able to push that content back out through the use of APIs. So in this latest release, we have released an API that is being tested, and I really hope that's the kind of thing that we can turn into a widget that works in public libraries. We are also working together in partnership on issues like data quality, linked data, and IPR, as I've mentioned. So the vision of Europeana is very much about enabling the user to discover, explore, to be inspired by the cultural content, cultural heritage that we hold in our institutions, to try and take it to a new generation, to a new set of people, which is why the API is so important. The speaker earlier spoke about putting the information where the user is, and I strongly believe in that. It's got to be in the education systems. It's got to be in the public library when the person is looking up the information on Mozart locally. They need to be able to see what it is that relates to them when they're doing it. So we are looking at how we make that work. It is about getting the content through to the users, that we provide them with what they actually need, not with what we decide to give them. So we're working on a network of nodes. It doesn't matter where you come in, whether you come in through the public library, you come in through Google, you come in through one of the museums, one of the libraries, you should be able to access all of the information in that network. And that's where things like linked data come in, and the ability to share that information should be. I've tried to think about the kind of partnerships that, so moving on from, these are the projects we've done, this is the experience that we've had to date, into how you might start to look at projects in public libraries that you'd like to do, or that are currently happening. And for instance, the National Library of the Netherlands is working on a national information infrastructure, the provision of scientific information, and this is actually part of their strategic plan across the Netherlands, and it involves the use of public libraries. The provision, actually just basic provision of digital access in a public library, it is still my parents who are going to the public libraries. We should make use of the fact that they are turning up and try and persuade them into I'm sure you're already doing this, that teaching you all to suck cake is very dangerous. And then also to create the e-learning, training environment. One of the ones I love is there's the Botswana National Library has a mobile library that teaches life skills to the kids who have been orphaned by AIDS. And that kind of model of how you really take what's necessary out into the community, I think is very, very interesting. And the one that I want to just talk a bit more about is user-generated content facilitators, and I saw that Alan was in the audience. And this is a project that we submitted for funding but didn't get, but we're going to try and do anyway while we get some funding. It's the Great War Archive, which is the most fantastic means of getting the local populace, maybe through the public libraries, to come and put their information on the web. And that information relates really heavily to the kind of information that you will find from the cultural institutions themselves. This one is one that I think Stuart gives, or a similar one. This is actually a photograph submitted onto the Great War Archive where somebody was shot in the chest. This is the bullet hole that you can see through the photograph of his wife and daughter. That is so potent. It is so much about my history, and bringing those two things together, I think, are very powerful. So I'm now going to quick plug for tomorrow, because that's what I was supposed to be doing up here. Tomorrow is about finding money for the things you want to do anyway, making use of experts to take away the drudge, take advantage of the partners who have done it before, really actively create social inclusion. I've got a great cast of experts, except for myself. And I'm not going to do this because you've all seen it before, but this is in here, the Art Nouveau that you can do on Europeana, because on the it's the quickest I've ever done these. On the 30th of September, we're actually going to do a special event to launch this Europeana's new digital Art Nouveau online, and I've got some leaflets. Anybody who is in Brussels, please take one with you. It's open to your friends, your family, your wife, your kids, everybody. Please come tomorrow.